It's great to be back in game week. I think you could definitely feel it with the intensity at practice, the energy at practice, the competitiveness at practice. Thought our guys really had 3 quality days of work, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, with Monday a great day to kind of get back to it. But they really brought it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it shows in, like I said, in the intensity and the competitiveness at practice, which is what we were hoping to have coming off of the bye week last week. And so I love where we're at from a mentality standpoint. I really like where we're at physically. Obviously we got some guys back healthy. And I just think we're getting ready to go play a ball game Saturday in a hostile environment on the road. We know that Houston would like nothing more than to knock us off in this ball game. And so it's going to have to take our best effort to go in there and get a win.
Great. Thanks. Kirk, start us off.
Steve, you almost always rave about your practices. I wonder, is this just a great, mature team, or do you ever have bad practices this year?
No, we do. We've had them in the past for sure. But I do think there's a real level of maturity, and I think that's a great word to describe this football team. We've got really good leadership on this team across the board. It's not like one position group's got good leaders and maybe another one doesn't. I think that we're spread throughout our roster of veteran players who are in year 3 in our program, who really understand how we go about our business. I think our coaching staff does a tremendous job day in and day out of getting our guys prepared to go practice. And in the end, I said it yesterday. We have guest officials that come, and it was a 2-hour practice, and Wednesdays are traditionally tough practices for us. And we always do a good on good team period at the end. On Wednesdays, we do third downs. And our guys were more excited for that period of practice after a hard practice than I can remember. And I looked at the official and I said, man, our guys love to practice. Like, they really love being out here. And that's a great sign, that they're not just surviving practice. They're attacking it. They're having fun doing it. They're competing at a high level. So to your point, I do think that takes a lot of maturity, but I also think you have to have players on your team that love the game. And those are, one of the characteristics that we look for in recruiting is, do you love football? And if you love football, we only get so many opportunities to be out there. And we put a lot of time and effort into preparation for practice and games. And so when we get those moments, we want to maximize them. And I think this team has been one of the better ones I've ever been around, and definitely probably the best I've had here in 3 years of their intent going to practice. Everything they do is intentional, and they really try to be coachable, but yet they're highly, highly competitive.
Eric, go ahead.
Morning, Steve. On Monday, you talked about wanting to reemphasize forcing turnovers and creating turnovers coming out of the bye. Just wondering, from your vantage point, is there anything different that maybe the guys were doing in the first 2 weeks when they created 5 turnovers that maybe they weren't doing over the past few games, or just is it kind of happenstance how that works?
I think it's probably both. Truth be told, I think sometimes you need to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there defensively, right? Whether it's zone coverage, man coverage, fitting a run a specific way, running a game up front. And then when you're there, then you can take advantage of the opportunity to create that turnover. So I think that's the first part. The second part, I think, having the mindset of the ball on your mind, of how are we getting the football, right? Are we getting it because of, when we sack the quarterback, there's a strip attempt? Are we getting it because when we're in zone coverage, we're doing a great job of recognizing route combinations and having the ability to jump a route to create a turnover, which we saw earlier in the year? Is it understanding when you feel that first tackler starting to wrap that runner up and I'm the second man in to go ahead and get a punch or a strip on that ball, knowing that he's in the grasp of the first defender? So I do think there's ball awareness. But I also think there's something about football IQ and football awareness. And I know we've talked a lot about this about Jalen Ford. There's something about his game where he kind of finds the football, right? Because he's where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. He remains very calm. He doesn't get frantic. And so when it's a punch attempt, an interception, a fumble recovery, he's really under control to do those things. So we continue to try to emphasize that, and we definitely emphasized it a bunch here over the last 2 weeks, and hopefully here in the second half of the season that it pays dividends. I don't know, I'd love to get a few turnovers here Saturday defensively, but sometimes it's about opportunity. You have to have the opportunities to do that, and some of it's you create your own opportunities. But hopefully, as we look back at these 6 games here, when we come to December, that there was a real emphasis on the ball, and it showed in our ability to create those turnovers.
Joe Cook, go ahead.
Even we talked to David Benda on Monday. He kind of rattled off some specific points about players on the scouting report for Houston. Guys that they're watching, that y'all are watching. How much information do you want to have for your players on that scouting report? Maybe not like specific about Houston, but just what info do you try to give them on a weekly basis for guys to look out for?
Well, I mean, naturally there's the general scouting report of the type of offense, defense, and or special teams that they run, depending on the phase of the game, right? Whether it's the fronts, the coverages, the blitzes that they like to run, whether it's the style of run game, the personnels that they use, the pump protection or pump block that they like to incorporate. So those are big picture things that we try to get our players really tied into. The second part is we really try to get our players to know their opponent, right? Who are they competing against on a down after down basis? And if you're a left tackle, what about this defensive end I'm going against? What do I need to know, right? What are his moves? What are his alignments, and trying to find any tips, any tendencies there. So we kind of start high level, big picture, and then it drills all the way down to very player specific on who I need to compete against and what do I need to be aware of. And then there's the game plan. Okay, how are we trying to attack these people on all 3 phases? And so if the players can really tie all of that together, then they can play with a lot of confidence, and that should remove some of the doubt and or uncertainty going into a ball game that, hey, okay, I got a really good idea about who they are. I have a really good idea about who I'm going against. And I have a really good idea of how we're trying to attack them in whatever phase of the game that we're talking about.
Thomas Jones, go ahead.
Coach Donovan Smith, aside from running a different offense with Dana, how does he look different as a quarterback compared to when you saw him last year? And what did you guys talk about as far as facing another mobile quarterback this week?
Yeah, it is a different system, I would say, but I would also say schematically there's a lot of similarities, right? It's a little bit more of an open offense. There's 3 and 4 wide receivers on the field. They spread the field. And then by doing that creates running lanes for the quarterback. And, what I think I've seen out of Donovan, his comfort level throwing the ball, this year coming into this game, as opposed to last year early in the season when we faced him, he's throwing the ball at a high level. He's very comfortable. They've got a good receiving core. And he does a really good job, like when we run RPOs, we RPO with the runner and then the receivers on the perimeter and or tight ends. They RPO with the quarterback run with advantage throws and RPO type throws. And so his decision-making, I think, is at a high level. They're running quarterback counter with an RPO, and he's making that decision to throw it or to run it. And then he's such a big physical guy. It's not so much of the elite speed of the mobile quarterback, but the fact of how big he is and that he falls forward and that he can run so physical. Like we learned that last year on a couple short yardage runs. A 4th down run was a critical play. He breaks a tackle to get a 1st down. So I think it's really important with him that we tackle really well. And then we try to kind of shrink the running lanes in there for him, especially on the design quarterback runs.
Roger, go ahead.
Sark, you talk a lot, and you touched on Monday about culture, and when you do have a loss, and that really tests it, I would imagine, more than when things are rolling pretty well. What have you seen this week? Have you seen anything different, or is that what you want to see? Is it nothing different from the first 5 weeks getting ready for a game?
I feel like I've got a team right now that's a little pissed off, and that's okay. That they're angry, and they want to get back on the field. They want to play. I think they, all likelihood, I know a lot of them wanted the rest last week. I think they all wanted to get out there and play again next Saturday to kind of get that taste out of their mouth. And so that's kind of how practice has felt. It's been very intense. Because I think that these guys feel like we're a good football team and we've got something to prove. And as a coach, the fact that it's coming internally, that it's coming from them in the locker room, that's a great sign. And so, again, we need to make sure that we execute at a high level, but the intent from which we're going about it throughout practice. And I think the intent that we'll play with Saturday, and then every Saturday moving forward, I think is the right one.
Leah, go ahead.
Coach, I was wondering if you have an injury update on kind of the list of players: Jake Majors, Ryan Watts, JC Sanders. You said you'd have an update today.
Yeah, everybody's practiced. A couple of those guys I think will be game time decisions, but again, everybody practiced all week. My decision as a coach ultimately is those guys, that all the guys we're talking about, is it in the best interest of the team, to put them out there? Do they put us in the best position to be successful? And then B, I have to look at each individual. Is it in their best interest to put them out there to compete? But I will give them all a lot of credit. They all came to work this week and worked hard, and they've continued to do their rehab. And I'm probably more pleased with where we are at this week than maybe a little bit of what I was anticipating. So that's a real positive, and that's a credit to our training staff and to those guys individually of putting in the work to get themselves in position to be where they're at today.
Danny, go ahead.
Steve, I believe you're a little familiar with him from his recruitment, but just what are your kind of impressions of Matthew Golden and what he brings to that kickoff return game? I know he's a little banged up, but just what he can do in the return game.
Yeah, really good player. I think first of all, as a wideout, he's been a really productive player at receiver. And then naturally in the kickoff return game, it is something that they've excelled at this year. And I think he's a lot of the reason why, when you have big kickoff returns, I think naturally everybody thinks you just block everything perfectly. But what he's done a good job of is making one guy miss or breaking one tackle and then creating that explosive return. And he's got the strength to do that. And then obviously he has the speed to take it the distance. And so it's a huge coaching point for us in this game is corralling him in the kickoff coverage game. We take a lot of pride in our kick coverage unit. Clearly they take a lot of pride in their kickoff return game, but I think he's a big reason for that. He was always in recruiting a highly competitive young man, had a high football IQ, and you see it in the way he plays, not only on special teams, but on offense as well.
Got time for three last ones. Anwar, go ahead.
Real quick, Coach, before my main question, CJ Baxter, he was amongst the guys that did practice this week.
Yes.
Okay. At the Monday after your last game, you said you were kind of kicking yourself that you didn't play Jon Cook a little bit more. Could this be the week that we see a little bit more of Jonte? And if so, what you say he's earned it. So what has he done behind the scenes to kind of earn a little bit more playing time?
Yeah, I mean, I think inevitably, in our offense, there's a lot of detail that's put into it. That's into what we do. It's never been about the talent. Jonte is a very talented young man. He's bigger than most people think. He's got great strength. He's a very good route runner. But ultimately, his understanding of formations, motion shifts, coverages, details in route depth and where he's supposed to be. And then the consistency to do that. I think that's always one of the challenges for young players is the level of consistency day in and day out, right? Play in and play out, right? Who are they on a daily basis? Not always when we're on the field, but in meetings. And then when it goes to practice, and because ultimately you're trying to gain trust and you're trying to develop trust. And I think that's something Jonte is continue to work at. And when I say earned it, I think that's what I'm talking about. He's earning the trust of the coaches. He's earning the trust of the quarterback, that he can be a guy that can go out there and function and play good football for us.
Jeff Jones, go ahead.
Sark, last December, T. Sweat was one of the first upperclassmen to announce that he was coming back. How have you seen that decision pay off for him? How is he a different player today than he was earlier midway last season?
Pretty good. It's paying off pretty good. I think Sweat, one thing that I've been impressed with him is he's obviously a big man. He's obviously very talented. He's got great feet for a big man. He's powerful. He's really starting to utilize his pass rush ability. But probably the thing that's been the most impressive is his ability to sustain, right? His ability to play multiple snaps at a high level, which was something that we really, and Coach Bo and I have been pushing him on, is you can't play one play at elite level and then the next two not elite. And I think one thing he's doing this year is he's playing at an elite level down after down after down. And when you're a big man like that, with ability, and then with the high football IQ that he has, that's a recipe for a guy who's been playing really good football for us through the first half of the season. And, hopefully that continues. He's had a great attitude. He's been a tremendous leader this year. A guy who's kind of stepped into that role as we lost a couple from that last year's group with Coburn and Morrow. He and Murphy have really stepped up. Alfred has stepped up, but I think inevitably for Sweat, it's just been the level of consistency that he's playing at an elite level, as opposed to last year we'd see flashes of a good play and then it would kind of go away. This year it's been very much more consistent.
Last one, Cedric, go ahead.
Hey, Steve, your upperclassmen have been in hostile environments, Fayetteville, Stillwater, Fort Worth. Dana Holgerson's already said he's been told he could go at 1-11, just beat Texas. What atmosphere do you expect, and why is it important to have that senior leadership that's kind of been through those wars?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, that's kind of why I said what I said at media days, that the reality of it is everywhere we go this year, not so different than any other year, we're the University of Texas, right? And everywhere we go, we're going to get everybody's best shot. Everybody's going to sell out their game. Everybody's going to want to do a blackout. Everybody's going to do something for that ball game or whatever that is. And this is the second Big 12 coach that said the exact same thing, that his donors and his boosters said, if you only win one game, beat Texas. So I do think the veteran leadership is helpful. Because they've been through some of the fires and they can calm some of the players around, the younger players around. Let's just stay focused on the task at hand. But it is good to know what you're walking into, right? I'm a big Sun Tzu Art of War, and you need to know what you're walking into, and you need to understand that the battle's won before it's fought. And so our preparation is really critical when we go into that environment and we stay level-headed and we stay connected, and that we're going to face some adversity Saturday. But the next play is the most important play, and making sure that we've got the right mental intensity and the right focus to execute that next call.